Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Podcast. This is episode 11.
Wow.
Of course, you're joined as usual. I'm joined as usual by Barry.
Hello.
And I'm Mike. And we are here to talk about board games that are coming out, and the board games we've been playing.
Although not too many for me in this last couple of weeks, but not none. Never none.
Never zero.
Yeah.
Always got to get something in somewhere. Well, I've been playing a fair few games, and I've got some notes, and I'm going to talk about them. But first, we're going to talk about Cyberpunk 2077, the board game.
Played the video game.
Like the video game. Like the IP that the other things are based on. I was under the impression this had already come out, Barry. But it's new on crowdfunding.
Maybe. I definitely feel like I've seen it.
This is because Simon already did a Cyberpunk 2077 board game called Cyberpunk 2077 Life in Night City or something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I thought that maybe they'd cancelled it and this was a relaunch. So imagine my discovery when that has been funded and is either delivered or in the process of delivering. I'm not sure. And now there's a different Cyberpunk 2077 that's just Cyberpunk 2077, the board game.
It looks like there's 3 Cyberpunk 2077 games.
Well, only 2 giant miniature ones from crowdfunding, as far as I can tell.
I think this other one didn't come out. Yeah, Afterlife, the card game, which was going to be Simon, but that didn't come out. And then the other one did. Gangs of Night City.
Gangs of Night City, that's what it was called. Yeah, there was a whole ton of designers credited to that.
Yeah, everybody just took a quarter of the board. Do what you want over there.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it's a new system or if it was a cooperative thing. I've just been looking at the one that's live at the moment because it's just launched. And I guess the Simon one wasn't enough for our Cyberpunk 2077 fans.
Well, CDPR got to make the money back somehow. Licenses galore.
Now, I didn't play the video game, and we're not really here to talk about the video game. I'm conscious that it had many issues when it launched, and I don't actually know if in the end they fixed them or if it's any good. But it does seem beloved. I know people who are excited about this new Cyberpunk board game, and I've seen it's already raised a crazy amount of money.
So who makes this one?
So this has been launched by Go On Board, which is a company that's run by the designer Lukasz Wozniak, who's also designed 4 other games. They've designed 4 other games. 3 other games they've designed with Go On Board.
Right.
And I believe they've all been crowdfunding endeavors. So there was Valhalla in 2018, Titans in 2021, and The Witcher: The Old World, which delivered last year in 2023. And you may remember Witcher: The Old World. It went gangbusters. It was a huge big box of miniatures. Titans was a sort of a war game on a board. I met Lukasz at Essenspiel, and he showed me Titans, and actually as a result I backed it. I remember we played it, actually the whole thing at Essenspiel that year, and it was really really good. We really enjoyed playing the game, and it had this really interesting sort of like action card system. But I've since revisited the final product, and for some reason the magic never came back to life of that first play, and I don't know why.
Caught up in the hype there with the designer.
I don't know if it was that, because it was quite hands-off, actually, you know, because I'm quite conscious of the sort of the curated board game experience where you show up at a convention and they sit you down, they show you the game, and then, you know, every time you have a rules question, there's an expert there to answer it for you, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, we've all had the polar opposite demo experience as well, where you go to demo something and then nobody knows how to play, and you're like just kind of left on your own devices. But you know, it goes both ways. You can have an incredible demo experience, and it can really do a lot for a game. So Yeah, Titans I thought was only okay. The final product was only okay. I mean, it's certainly got an interesting sort of action selection mechanism and all that kind of stuff. And, it's this sort of dudes on a map, territory control affair with dicey combat. But there were a couple of things that didn't manifest in the version we played at Essen. I don't know if they were changed or if they just never came up. But in the versions I play, in the games I played of the final game, for example, there's a cap on the dice pool. Like, you can only get certain numbers of dice. And it feels like it wants to be a big dice chucky game where you have huge armies going to war. So, in fact, you can only get like one cannon die, or maybe it's two, but you're limited in the number of artillery dice you can have and cavalry dice you can have. So your armies are capped at quite a limited size because extra soldiers aren't really helpful because they don't give you access to more dice. So it's very strange decision on that front. Maybe it was just about a component limitation issue. But in any case, Titans was something that excited me and I thought was quite inventive, but then just didn't really stick the landing. And The Witcher: The Old World is one I just couldn't get behind. I'm not a huge fan of The Witcher. I also don't mind The Witcher. I've not had a whole lot of experience of The Witcher, so I needed to see some really exciting mechanisms. And
Yeah.
I thought that just from the gameplay demo they put up with the campaign, it looked to me like it was going to have some serious issues with downtime. That's what put me off, because it had two players playing out the combat. Every time there was a combat on someone's turn, they had to play against another player. Even that player was playing the role of the monster or whatever. So I just kind of felt like, okay, that's going to have to be really snappy, or else it's going to be too much downtime. Anyway, I haven't played it, so I can't speak to the final product.
I had the same feeling. I eyed it up for a while it was running. I can't remember if I hit back and then backed out or never got around to backing it. I think I never got around to backing it, but not necessarily for the same reasons. It just didn't grab me in quite the same way. I am a little heavier into The Witcher. Played 1, 2, 3, mostly 1 and 3. I have the RPG stuff. Never really got into the books, but consumed some comics and whatnot. But I played the old board game as well, the FFG one, which was just kind of go somewhere, flip a card, see what happens. FFG, you're so in about.
Yeah, that was an unusual collaboration between FFG and Ignacy Cevicek, wasn't it?
Yeah, I played that a fair amount, and it was fine, but it wasn't setting the world alight. And I didn't get it's a very different game, Witcher: The Old World, but it just kind of seemed to boil down to you're just in that world. The game itself wasn't as gamey as it could have been. I think for what I'm looking for, wasn't quite Euro-y enough. It relied on the stories, which I don't mind. Like, I enjoy narrative games, but anyway, I also did not pull the trigger.
So we can't speak to the quality of Witcher: The Old World, but I would suggest if you were tempted by Cyberpunk and you know someone who has it, maybe that would be a good game to check out, because of course it's a similar kind of thing and it's the same designer and the same publisher. The Cyberpunk 2077 game is slightly different in that it is fully cooperative, and The Witcher: The Old World, I believe, was could be cooperative or competitive. Cyberpunk reports it will be 60 to 90-minute sessions that comprise a 33-hour campaign and end in a endless afterlife mission generator, which will continue to produce episodes of the game after you finish the campaign. And just one heads up as well, I think the Witcher game, from what I know, what I've heard on the grapevine, is massively improved. That's not to say it becomes good or significantly changes, but people all agree that the base game felt as though there was a lot of missing content, which was made up for in the expansions. So if you are looking at Cyberpunk, maybe that's something to keep in mind as well.
Are there many expansions already?
For Cyberpunk, I don't know. There was definitely some pledge level for sort of a deluxe edition and a basic edition, and it looked like there were a lot of stretch gold. But I don't know if anything's actually been officially siphoned off into expansions. But that was
Deluxe
also
just
the case.
seems to add plastic.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of plastic in there as well, including little sort of dial bases that look like they're possibly for tracking hit points that you attach to the miniatures.
Well, I'm not against bling, but yeah, I'll maybe have a look. But again, a 33-hour campaign game also does not appeal. So
Yeah, I'm sort of feeling a bit tapped out on the topic of campaign games for the moment. So,
well, who knows? Maybe the other Cyberpunk game that's coming out soon, the Ozob or whatever he's called. So, within the I have played the video game Cyberpunk 2077, and in it, one of the characters has a grenade for a nose, and he's getting his own board game as well. It seems.
What? Who? Why? What?
Yeah,
Where?
exactly. I think it's a step too far. Obviously, them licenses are going cheap. Maybe almost as cheap as the Planet of the Apes skirmish game license. Odd choice for. I'd be interested to know what mechanisms are in that made them think this has to be Planet of the Apes.
Well, you'll take what you can get, I suppose. Although, just to be clear, you're not excited for Ozo, the grenade guy board game?
I don't think it's fully launched. In fact, Ozob, so a Cyberpunk board game. That is going to be Nonsense Creations, and so nonsense by name, nonsense by nature. And in this, it's another campaign game by the looks of things, where you take on, you're like a squad of these weirdos around Night City, I guess. And here we go. Ozob, a heavy-duty labour bioroid made by an insane scientist to look like a clown. With only 2 years left until his expiration date and a bright red grenade for a nose, he's all about squeezing everything out of life. So that kind of tells you what level you're at. There's not a lot of information about how the game plays. So
I want it to be like basically hot potato.
no, it's very much in the same vein as this Cyberpunk by the looks of things, except you're playing the bad guys.
Well, on to something we were excited about, and I remain excited about, something I've backed. It's Ra, the Traders expansion, the Pharaoh Edition reprint. It's live now. You can go and get it. This includes the retail edition with the cardboard. It includes the Pharaoh edition with the wooden tiles and metal coins, which I believe, I don't know if you have, Barry, that's the one I got, and it's lovely.
I don't have anything yet, but I will soon.
Very good. Well, you have the opportunity then to get the new, even more expensive edition, which, instead of wooden tiles and metal coins, is entirely acrylic.
Ooh. I believe, I've not looked fully at the campaign yet, but I believe the metal coins are now an add-on, but that you can't get until Pledge Manager opens. I'll have to have a look at that. But the acrylic version, I like wooden pieces. But if you get the wooden piece version, the expansion won't fit in the box. The acrylic tokens are the same size as the cardboard tokens in terms of thickness. Obviously, they're acrylic. And you will be able to fit the expansion in the box. So that is the main selling point, to change away from wood. Wood to plastic. But yeah, we spoke about the traders last week, I think. Adds a little something. You don't have to even play with it, like Ra's solid as it is.
I've since read the rulebook. It's all of a page.
Yeah.
And it works pretty much exactly as we'd discovered, in that there's 20 trader tiles. They go into the bag, and then they go into the offering. And the first time you acquire one into your tableau, or maybe you acquire more than one at once, but when you acquire any number of them for the first time, you get nothing. Mm-hmm. And then every time subsequently after that, when one is acquired, you get tokens equal to your existing ones. Presumably also, if you get say, a fourth tile, you would get 3 trader tokens for your 3 existing tiles. And then at the end of epoch scoring, all of those little tokens that you've been collecting are worth a point. So there's a sort of, you don't want to get left out, but you also don't want to help other people score kind of situation going on.
Yeah.
And for those that have played the game, there are 20 of those tiles. And for reference, there are 12 of the Nile tiles. So if you thought the Nile tiles were rare, these are about twice as common.
Quick math.
Yeah, I won't do any more detailed math than that. I refuse. You can't make me.
Lols.
In other news, this is just a shout out for fans of level 99 games. You will probably have come across level 99 at some point. They've done many games, including Millennium Blades, the BattleCon fighting system, which includes things like Devastation of Indines, Pixel Tactics, Imperial Spells and Steam, and Argent the Consortium. Argent and Imperial are designed by Trey Chambers, one of the designers that works with Level 99, and the other games are all designed by D. Brad Talton Jr., who is the designer of this new game, Spooktacular, which is launched on crowdfunding. I don't know much about it. I had a quick look at it. It is some kind of light competitive game based on B-movie horror films, and it's got a sort of a really sort of cutesy movie theme going on. That's all I know about it. I know that Will over at The Hungry Gamer had a review copy or a preview copy, so he's put out a video about it, so you can always go and have a look at that if you want to find out a bit more.
Cool.
And play any Level 99 games, Barry?
Yeah, I have played, definitely played Millennium Blades. I played a little bit of BattleCon, but not enough to get into it, to know what I'd be talking about there. Again, probably more on the app than real life for that one. But I've not even looked at the other ones, like Pixel Tactics. Was something that I'd seen around, but I never had the chance to play.
I, too, have played mostly, actually, Trey Chambers. I've played Argent, the Consortium, and Imperial Spells and Steam. I actually own Imperial. I've got some BattleCon as well, which I've played some of, and Millennium Blades too. But it's altogether too much to get into this brief news segment. So if you want to hear more about Level 99, leave a comment on the video. Let us know. And other than that, I've got just one more tiny announcement. It's not really even an announcement. It is an announcement of a forthcoming announcement.
Whoa,
Dice Throne are happy with Marvel Dice Throne. They're pleased with the amount of work that's been done. They believe it's good. It's ready to deliver. So they've decided to start work on the next Kickstarter for Dice Throne. Dice Throne, the game that launched a company of tens of people now. They've got a design team and a production team. So now they can do Dice Throne content while producing more Dice Throne content. But there was a trailer. It didn't really show much for Dice Throne Outcasts, launching October 29th on Kickstarter. It's all they've said is there will be new heroes and new content, and it will have a darker theme.
Back to their own characters, or is this also Marvel?
Also unknown. I suspect it will be a return to original characters, because there was nothing in the trailer. There's no teasers in the trailer to suggest that Marvel. It would be, or a tie-in of any kind.
Yeah, I know Marvel are doing Thunderbolts next year, which is, Dark Avengers type thing, but let's assume unrelated for the time being.
Well, I would have ventured it could have been, some other, but the only information they give out is the heroes will be darker, and the set's called Outcasts. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know any superhero group called the Outcasts. I'm sure there is one, but I've never heard of it.
Well, hey, yeah.
And I suspect if there was something to do with that, people would have been all over it.
Yeah. People love Marvel. Do you know what else people love?
Cotton candy?
Puerto Rico. Special edition. So by the time this comes out, don't be too hasty with the clicks, but the day after, assuming Mike's all on time, the Puerto Rico Special Edition from Awakened Realms will be up on GameFound.
And if it launched 2 days ago, then you know that my life is hectic.
Exactly, right? So based on when this was published and when the campaign started, you'll know exactly how busy Mike was. So I don't know. I've talked about this, I think, briefly before when I seen it. I quite recently got rid of my old copy of Puerto Rico with the sort of 2 expansions that I had. And I don't know why I'm particularly hyped for this, because I only actually rate Puerto Rico at 6.5 on Board Game Geek. But I'm still probably going to get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Surprised.
Like, I've had some good games of Puerto Rico. Like the core element of it's fine. The expansions added new buildings and stuff, and I never really mastered the expansions, like in the nobles and the stuff that
I never
kind of
played
added.
them. I only played the base
game. The base game's, I think, a solid enough game. Interesting enough. The buildings that you get in the base game are fine. The bits of plastic that they're adding in the Awakened Realms campaign, entirely superfluous. Not needed, but soon you'll have a little plastic ship. And with a little bit, I think, of finagling, I could turn them into Medici boats, and then I'll be closer to my my dream version. But this
Dream Medici.
yeah, this is it's a republishing effectively of Puerto Rico 1897. And Puerto Rico 1897 came about trying to modernize the original, take it away from its sort of colonialist overtones, and instead hand the power back to the people of Puerto Rico and their sort of agriculture industry that they had for a time there. And then, but this has now been taken over by, that was all still Ravensburger, I think, at least. And then it's now been taken over by Awakened Realms, who produced the Castles of Burgundy Special Edition with all the gloss. And this looks to be very similar. And I'm hoping they're going to bring all the expansions the same way they did for Castles of Burgundy. They'll probably add one new one. I have had a brief look at the pre-campaign. It's kind of up there, but I can't 100% tell, not having been played all the previous expansions because I didn't have them all, what's new and what's not.
Well, we can certainly go and have a look at the campaign once it launches and come back with a few more thoughts if it's not a very short campaign. If it's a 10-day campaign, who knows? But I suspect, much like Castles of Burgundy, this will be open for late pledges and things for a long time to come. Now, it is worth noting that Puerto Rico 1897 did seek to address some of the insensitivities of the original, like you said, and you've put here as well, but they brought Jason Perez on as a cultural advisor. I don't know if he's involved in the Awakened Realms version.
Oh, you're opening a can of worms there. He's very much not, and he's not happy about it.
Oh, has he made any commentary about that?
So yes, he put something up a while ago when it was kind of first announced that Awakened Realms was taking it over. He took that down. There's been this discourse back and forth, but he's put the video back up again. It's about 90 minutes of him talking about why, where he's airing his grievances with it. I can see some of his points. I'm not aligned with his thinking on. He put a lot of work into making it more something that people of Puerto Rico could be proud to be associated with, rather than sort of the original version. And then, Awakened Realms are kind of building on top of that, but without him. and he felt that updating element was very much his contribution to the game, and he should be included in some way.
Well, it feels a bit like a no-brainer to get him involved, really. So I'm curious about the decision-making behind that, especially because, as you said, it's a very touchy subject. This sort of historical context for these kinds of things and cultural sensitivity. It's hugely important. And I think, we can see a big difference when a game takes these sorts of things seriously and tries to actually address cultural context and what was going on and the impacts of these things. And it's very common for games that have come out of Europe to just cast you into the role of the European conqueror and you win the games by engaging in, just absolute capitalism.
Yeah.
And,
well,
I'm not saying that it's unrealistic, and I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to alter history or try to, portray a different view of history, try to present an unreality. It's important to keep things realistic, I suppose, but, it's also, very insensitive to just put yourself in the role of the white conqueror and go, yes, you win by being the best white conqueror, and that's the game, and I can totally understand, of course, why that would be very upsetting to people when, the brutal acts of these conquerors are not represented in the game, or when they are represented, it's purely as a sort of transactional exploitation to get more victory points. It's not good. And so I think that needs to be addressed and considered. And so I think it was probably a source of great disappointment to Jason when Puerto Rico 1897 came out, and he'd made such a big effort to try and address this, challenging historical context and, make it a game that is, not only true to his heritage, but also something that he can play with Puerto Ricans and feel proud of, or enjoy. And then Ravensburger really just screwed up the printing, and they put out a bad edition. Like, that's heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah, lots of printing errors within 1897. But the thing, everything you've said's entirely valid. But the thing to remember, of course, is that Jason was hired by Ravensburger, and this is Awakened Realms. They're a different company. They're under no real obligation to employ the same staff members, but it's not as if Awakened Realms...
Well, that's entirely true, and I think Jason came into this as a content creator who was criticizing Puerto Rico from this perspective, which is entirely legitimate, and Ravensburger made the effort, or perhaps he was the initiator, I don't know, but an effort was made to try to sort of engage in some cultural consideration. And hopefully Awakened Realms will have found someone else for the role if they're not using Jason, and they'll give it as due consideration. Hopefully.
They have said they have, when you kind of spoke to them, they had their own consultants, but it's not as if they've not put a foot wrong with this campaign. The original... I was
about to say, yeah.
The original cover being AI art, among a couple other bits and pieces, but anyway, they've kind of resolved most of that, and
so now that we've got through all the simple issues, can we get into the complex issue of why on earth Barry, who had it, rated at 6.5 and sold it, is now backing it? What's going on with that?
6.5 is kind of the bottom end of where a regular, in fact, not even that, like Monopoly Deal, I think I only rate something like a 5.5. I probably played it 120 times, like the difference between... It's a tricky one. Like, sometimes you can view things objectively and rate it as such. Like, where do you put this game? Yeah, I want to play it sometimes, but I don't want to play it all the time, which is where like a 6.5 is. I think a 7 on Board Game Geek is I will always play this game if it's suggested, and an 8's like I would usually suggest this game, kind of. So the Board Game Geek rating wise, so 6.5 is just between never turning down the game and happy to play it type thing. And that's kind of where I still think that's the case. I'm not always going to want to bust this one out, but if I had, I've enjoyed my games off it. I can see some flaws in the basic not flaws as such, but I can see other games where I have more fun with that I pick, you follow, or I choose, you follow type mechanisms. But I still think that Puerto Rico does what it does well. Games have evolved a little bit since then, I guess. Or there's newer things that use that same mechanism to greater fun, which is kind of what you want when you're playing a game. But the expansions, as I said, didn't really explore them fully, and they were starting to add a little something to the game, and so I'll reback it with the shiny version. Easier to get to the table. People think it was ugly. The old version was ugly.
It was very unattractive, but I suppose for me the expansions would be the deal breaker. Now I have no intention of backing this, so unless I see something that particularly wows me to bring me on side, then I would reconsider, perhaps. Again, it also depends on how they sort of handle the game and the presentation and all that sort of stuff. But for me, actually, what I find most off-putting about Puerto Rico these days is it's been played so much that there's quite a lot of like set openings and plays, and I don't know any of them.
So it depends who you're playing with, right?
Yes. So, and that's kind of the point. I see it as a very middleweight Euro that I'd bring out on a sort of relatively casual group, but you can come across players that are super excited to play it and incredibly good at it. And they just know the set openings and they've sort of solved a certain amount of the game. And look, I have no criticism of people that have achieved that level of game mastery. Certainly, I'm pretty good at some board games too. Although I don't know if I've ever gotten to the point of sort of memorizing fixed openings. I've seen it in Gaia Project as well, actually. But regardless, I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum. And if that's your fun, that's completely fine. It's just that for me, a middleweight Euro game tends to fit into a more casual space where I expect to see people of different skill levels. And so I'd want something that fits better into that space than a game that some people might have solved, And maybe they're not there on that game night, and that's fine. And I've got so many games, I could pick any other game. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? I've got so many other games, I could pick any other game. Why do I need this one? That some people have solved.
I mean, Puerto Rico was the number one game on Board Game Geek for a decade, right? So there's a reason it was so popular. But there is a little more variety. Well, not a little more. There's a lot more variety now, and a lot more. You can find something that does the same, gives you the same feel, that you perhaps might be able to mitigate some of that heavier strategy and the fixed openings, like you say. Although I'm not against it for as long as the game evolves in a different way as you go along. And it can often be that doing a fixed opening against weaker players where they do the wrong thing just suddenly screws up your opening as well. So you'd have to be aware when the meta is not to your liking. But anyway, I'll have it. Yeah. We can play.
Well, more on that when we see it, if there's more to say.
Correct. I also noticed there is the final Cloudspire expansion, Harbinger, and that's coming from Chip Theory Games and designed by the people at Chip Theory Games, so Josh J. Carlson, Adam Carlson, and Josh Vilgus. Introduces 3 new factions. There's some Harbinger stuff, I'm not 100% sure what it is. The minis for these new factions, I never had the minis for the, the original factions. And some other bits and pieces. Weirdly, they're bundling up the 20-strong Cloudspire in the Cloudspire campaign rather than a separate 20-strong campaign. So that's another game from Chip Theory Games, or a series of games from Chip Theory Games where they lean into their other IPs to make this dice-chucking game where a little bit like One Deck Dungeon we spoke about last time. You roll some dice and see if you can overcome the obstacles on cards. But Cloudspire was... I owned Cloudspire for a while. I didn't play too many games because it was super unwieldy. Both to get to the table, to teach. There's way too many keywords on tiny little chips, and you've got like 2 sheets of keywords to look up, and what does it do? And it's the kind of game that if it was, your only game, if that was your lifestyle game and that's what you played, it's probably very good. I never got to a degree where I was able to really consistently even beat the opening campaign game. There's a whole solo campaign and or two-player campaign in it as well. Playing against another player was fine. Playing 3-player was odd. Didn't work so well. It looked like it was really set up for opposing factions, so 1v1 or 2v2. But this is going to add these new factions, which are going to give you more variety. I'm sure you probably, if it's got more neoprene tiles, maybe you can go up to a 3v3 match. I'm not entirely convinced you couldn't do a 3v3 match already, but what I might try and do is get in on that Chip Theory early backer.
Oh, get a copy of the base game forever.
Pay a fortune and get all our games forever. Yeah. I'm going to see how that goes. People that got that early is definitely getting a lot of stuff out of it.
Yeah, certainly have, yeah. For people that don't know, this is a pledge level that Chip Theory Games have offered with all of their campaigns, I think going as far back as possibly the first ever Too Many Bones campaign. And I don't know how much it was back then, but it was in the region of $500 to $700 last I looked, US dollars. And it's called I can't remember if it's called a Founder or something, but the pledge level effectively gets you the base game of whatever campaign you're backing currently, as the Founder level is part of that, but also the base game for every future game that they publish, which is a crazy model and seems like a crazy commitment, but it always sells out.
They've got really strong fans, and the more games they make, the better value it is, right?
Yeah, well, of course, and they've only continued to produce games. Now, interestingly, would you get Harbinger as part of this campaign? I don't think so, because I think it's only base games. So you possibly would get 20 strong Cloudspire. Does that count as a base game? I don't know the terms and conditions. Yeah. I don't know. But in any case, I covered Cloudspire, the original campaign, back when it came out. So you can find a rules and setup, you can find competitive playthrough, and a final thoughts back from when I used to do the big series on the channel, if you're interested in finding out more.
And then in the biggest news of the week, finally the D.E.I. big box is on its way, shipping over from Germany. The new expansion, Faith and Anarchy, along with the box to store everything in, and I bought the little candy bag as well because I don't think I had it before. And so looking forward to receiving that in the next week or so.
Yeah, I am unreasonably excited about that. I'm unreasonably into D.E.I.
It's a good game. It's a fun game.
So if you don't know anything about it, it's Ludus Magnus Studios, who are largely known for sort of big miniatures and skirmish type games. Their biggest is, of course, Black Rose Wars. They also did Nova Eteos, and that became Nova Eteos Renaissance, which is a fantasy skirmish game. They did Sin Tempore, which was Nova Eteos in the future. They've just recently run the campaign for Blood, and they are in the process of delivering The Breach, which is a Black Rose Wars inside a computer. And now what they and all of those things are nothing like D.E.I., which is a Euro game they made. So it is more akin, I suppose, to something like Chamber of Wonders, but it really isn't anything like that either. It is a complete standout from their catalog. Designed by Tommaso Battista, who is known as the co-designer on Barrage. Without many other games to their name, it is a Euro game about building out your action card hand and collecting resources in post-apocalyptic nuclear winter London. You control a gang of scavengers moving around a board, which is made of low-level terrain and high-level terrain, and it's really sort of an action selection game. You control your pieces with a hand of cards, you move them around the board to collect resources, and then you use those resources to buy better cards that replace the ones in your hand. And that's basically the whole game. It's remarkably simple for how it looks. On the table, it looks complicated. It is reasonably short, and there's a little bit of argy-bargy for territory control, but it's really not all that confrontational either. But the production is nice, and I quite like the puzzle of building the handout.
Yeah, like what's worth it for the actions, what gets you more points. The temporary control of an area is what I like most of all. You only need to go in, you control it, and the end of your turn, you get the benefits from it. Somebody else comes in, takes it away from you again, and then you decide, is it worth trying to retake, or is it worth, do you move on to the next thing?
Yeah, there are a series of sort of checks that happen in various different ways across the game, but at certain points the game will look at you and go, are you doing the thing you need to be doing for points and or prizes? And so you do get some conflict around making sure you control the right things at the right time, which is quite good. And it creates player interaction, which is nice. But it is quite transitory as well. Like, you don't need to control things for the whole game, just sort of at the right moments. Likewise, the game is centered around collecting these resources, but once they're gone, they're gone. So you kind of get this sort of sense of migrating across the board as the resources rapidly dwindle.
Very good. Every time I've played it, it's been a good time. The game's always been relatively close. And there'll always been a different way to getting those close scores, whether you've gone heavy into the card buying, whether you've gone heavy into the resource control and area control for the end game, whether you've focused on big objectives for a turn and then faded away and come back for another big objective. Yeah, it's fun.
It does one of the things that I consider to be a cardinal sin of rulebooks, which is way too many variants on offer with way too little information about how those variants affect the game. So here's a heads up for anyone interested in trying it after this conversation. If you get a chance, you can ignore almost all the variants. Don't bother with them. Especially don't do the programming variant. It's awful. And the only variant that you should do, which I think adds a lot of value, is the drafting of the powers. At the start, you'll be asked to pick a blue power, green power, and red power, and you can just randomly deal these out, but there is I don't even know if it's a variant or an advanced mode or whatever, or, full game, but you can draft them in a snake draft. And that's much more fun and makes you feel a little bit like you had some say in what your gang's going to be doing.
Yeah.
So that's well worth doing. But that's the only one. Don't do the programming thing. I don't know why that's in there. It's terrible.
But yep, that's all the news from me this week.
So that's going to be it. If you've managed to get through that without looking anything up, without going on to crowdfunding, without backing anything, congratulations and well done. I know it's hard. Now we're going to talk about the games we played. Barry, there's nothing here from you. Or is it all at the end? Oh, it is at the end.
It's all at the end. But yes, as I said, limited gameplay this week, or the last couple of weeks. I had family down. Last week we're doing real life stuff, including airsoft range. So we had sniper rifles, airsoft sniper rifles. We did some karaoke for singing out and about for the bank holiday. Went to Phantom Peak, which is a live action, not escape game, but like the sort of mysteries and adventures with real actors, and you can buy food and drink and stuff when you're there, but you go around solving puzzles or interacting with the characters to progress a story. And then I went to the F1 arcade, which is for a watch party for Monza. You can go in, there's the driving sims and food and drink, and you watch the F1. So yeah, just been busy with other things for the most part, but I have played a few.
Well, that sounds like a lovely time.
It sure was.
Board games can happen in real life too, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was, yeah. We did have a board game day. I'll explain a little more when we get there.
Well, I will start with Barrage. I got the opportunity to play Barrage again. And this was good timing because it's back on Kickstarter. It is published by... It's a big box now. You can get all of the stuff. Actually, did you look at the Kickstarter for Barrage?
I've not seen it since it's gone live.
Well, let me tell you, for a start, Barrage is published by Cranio Creations, and it is designed by Tommaso Battista and Simone Luciani, and Cranio have published a number of other games through Kickstarter, and you can pretty much buy all of them as part of this Barrage campaign.
Do they all fit inside the big box?
The Cranio big box. It's the size of a Kallax, and it comes with every single one of their games. It's just windows like the One Deck Dungeon thing, only for giant boxes. No. So you can allegedly fit all of Barrage in the big box, which raises a question I have at the back of my mind, because I did back the big box, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I was just sort of surprised that you could get everything from Cranio there. If you are interested in any of their catalog, the one I'd recommend looking at in a little bit more detail is Anarchy, which is a game that I backed from them actually and played a few times. And I've still got. I'm not sure if I'll keep it forever. And I don't think you need all the expansions or anything like that. But the core game is interesting enough. It's sort of a 4X Euro action selection puzzle. And it's surprisingly Euro and very deterministic. But it's sort of this satisfying timing action selection thing that lasts, I reckon, you could probably play it in 90 minutes to 2 hours if people aren't getting too heads down. You probably couldn't drag it out, but it wants to be quite fast. It's surprisingly quick and punchy. So I was sort of impressed by that. I'm intrigued to play it a few more times at least before I consider moving it on.
What game is that? Sorry,
Anunnaki.
Anunnaki.
Which I understand is a conspiracy theory about the fact that we were all created by immortal beings from, like, gods or aliens who visited Earth and made humans. But I don't really know much more about the theory than that. But that's the premise of the game. You are a pantheon of gods, and they've come to Earth to create humans, and that is where the sort of area control comes in.
What, in the Prometheus?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
If you are,
but without xenomorphs, sad.
Sad. Just add them in. If people are looking at picking stuff up, the Mystery House escape room games from Cranio, generally had a lot of fun with. The Western one, Back to Tombstone, was the worst, but the other ones are quite good. You get
that's not the one with the torch.
That not necessarily with the torch, but you look inside the box.
Right, yeah, Chris picked that up and he told me it was awful.
Nah, it's okay. So the app's not great. My box came with the sides printed incorrectly. It went A, B, C, D, E, F, P, Q when it should have just continued. And so just when you set up the thing to begin with, you have to I just have to be aware that they're in the wrong place. But the actual the puzzles themselves are quite good, and being able to look in and see what you can see and try and figure it out. Sure, with all escape games, there's a couple of points where you're like, you don't get it, but other people would have probably got it, and they would have been stuck on things that you got. But there's only the 2 that come in the base game and the 3 expansions, and I've not seen anything else coming out for it, so I've moved mines on as well. But I just also noted, but I had a good time with it. I also noticed that they sell flashlights, so maybe that's
yeah. There are some there, I think, as well. But anyway, so back to Barrage. Oh yeah, and just Mystery House. There's a good example of how subjective board gaming can be, because Chris couldn't stop telling me how bad it was. But there you go.
But it
So
could have two things. I mean, they could have had the same mess up box that I had and built it wrong. And the second one
Yeah.
is you've got to get over the app. Like, the app is not the strong point of the game.
right, so it's an app-driven game, is it?
Yeah, you tell it what you see. And if, let's say, there was like a chair and a throne, and you're like, oh, it's a chair, and then like throne. Or you don't see anything that is asking you to choose from. It's like, I don't know what you're on about. And then you look at the back of one of the things from a different angle, and it's like, oh yeah. Anyway, yes.
Anyway,
Subjectivity.
Barrage is the somehow the instigator of this campaign, which is also kind of a miracle because the first Barrage campaign was such a disaster. But we won't talk about that either. Although it is worth mentioning that the Arcanum are not the best Kickstarter campaigns either. But anyway, Barrage is a 1 to 4 player competitive heavy Euro game, which is probably best at 4. In my opinion, anyway, it's best at 4. And I played it at 4. I had a great time. We just played the base game. We included all the exos and the companies that are currently out. And I threw in the Geological Factor mini expansion. And I said to somebody at the table, right as we started playing, I got 2 strategies I can see emerging on the table here for me. There's this obvious one that I should probably just do. And then there's this really risky one up over here that I might consider. And they were like, oh, do the risky one. Anyway, I lost horribly.
That is table talk, speech play. You were talked into it.
I was talked into it. But I had fun. I had a great time. So yeah, I'm backing the Barrage big box. And I don't really know why. I've got the original core box. I do remember like backing this campaign, but I don't have the Kickstarter edition of the game, so I can only assume I backed the retail edition or something. And I don't know why. I don't know if there's a massive price gap or whatever between those 2 editions, but I remember there was a Kickstarter edition which came with a fancy box and a 3D map, and I didn't get that. Maybe I just didn't want the map. I don't know. But I've since picked up all the other bits for it, including League Water, which I'm not a big fan of, and the Nile map, which I wasn't a big fan of, and the Jewel map and the Colorado map, which I haven't played yet. I think the Jewel map might actually be worth it if it makes the 2-player game feel like the 4-player game. I don't have the 3D map, but I have backed the big box. And so at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I do need it because I've got all this stuff. On the other hand, of all the stuff, I only like the exos, the companies, and the Geological Factor, which was the mini expansion we played with, and I thought fell just the right side of added complexity. It's a series of little pools of water, and you deal them into the lakes on the map, and then they give those lakes little asymmetrical effects. And some of them are blank, so they just don't do anything at all. But I just felt like for someone who's played it a few times now, I haven't played it as much as people who play it on PG, but I've played it a few times in real life. And this added enough flavor without too much overhead, because that's my primary thing about Barrage is like all the expansions seem to add. They make the timing less interesting, they make it feel less tight, and they add more overhead, which just kind of elongates the game without too much benefit. I felt like Nile did that with its watering system. You get to unlock asymmetrical player powers, and it's first come, first served, and all that kind of stuff. Geological Factor felt like it just fell on the right side of that line. But now I'm thinking, if I've got the big box to put all this stuff in, 1, I don't like half the stuff, and 2, is it going to have a huge space for the 3D map I don't have? Like, that's going to be annoying.
And you can't buy that as an add-on itself, can you?
Oh, yes, you can. You can buy the 3D map. Barry, everything's available. But I don't... the people who got the 3D map said it's horrible, because if you're sat behind the mountains at the top of the board, you can't see anything.
Yeah, get it.
Are you going to get it? I'm not going to get it. People say it's not good. So I'll tell you what, you get it, then you tell me about it. Tell me how much I'm missing out on.
I think I said before, like Barrage is fine. The cutthroat nature of it was a bit straight too far down that side for it to be a fun game that I'd want to recommend. I think again, so here's the discrepancy again. I think I rated Barrage a 7. So played with you and then mostly on Board Game Arena, and so obviously got beat every time. But some of the solo games as well. And I think it's fine if everybody's like, oh yeah, I want to play it. It's like, yeah, I kind of want to play it as well, but I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to have fun, but it might still be a good time, you know. So
when Awaken Realms do the Barrage Special Edition, then we'll get you on board, yeah?
That's it. Well, I mean, you've already got 3D tiles. I don't know how much more special it can be. So, like I said, not been playing too many things, but I have managed to get Quacks of Quedlinburg, the Duel, a few games of that in. So that is published by Schmidt-Spiel and same designer as the original Quacks, Wolfgang Wasch. And it is, if you don't know what Quacks of Quedlinburg is a bag builder. You are meeting up at this festival in Quedlinburg and you're trying to brew potions and sell them to the passers-by. Whether or not it's snake oil, that's kind of up to you to decide. But in the game, you're pushing your luck by pulling tokens out of a bag. You want to get as many good ones as you can, and eventually, if you pull enough bad ones, your pot explodes and you make a bad explosion and make an explosion and a bad potion. And that's played over a few rounds. But then the market phase allows you to buy new ingredients to put into your bag, and each of those does something different. There's 6. I think it's slightly more actually. I think there's 7 or 8 different ingredients you could buy, and every game you can have them do something different, whether it's a set, like a Sushi Go type menu, or you can kind of pick and choose what ones you want to go for. And the Duel is the same. So you've got these cards that tell you what the different tokens do. So there'd always be yellow tokens, for example, but what they do every game changes. And so Quacks with the expansion can play up to 5 players. This Duel version is slightly different, but the same core bag building mechanism. So you'll be buying new ingredients to put into your bag to pull out and hopefully make a better potion. Except in the 2-player game, that's more head-to-head. So you are competing across the marketplace to try and get people to come to your stall to buy your cures for their ailments. And it plays a little differently. So in Quacks, everybody keeps going until they bust or they stop. In Quacks Duel, players are only pulling out 3 good ingredients, a maximum of 3 good ingredients at a time, at which point they'll stop, and that will attract the patient over to their side of the market. So this is a tug of war game. There's a collection of patients in the middle, and the better your potion is, the more spaces they'll move towards you. However, you do have to stop when you've got 3 good ingredients. So then the other player gets a go to try and attract them back over to their side of the market. And eventually they'll get to one of your stalls and you'll rescue that patient. Well, not rescue the patient, but you'll sell them your potion and they'll go into your guild hall. But that gives a small catch-up mechanism, a small catch-up to upgrade a token to your opponent. So you're never getting too far behind. But then a new patient comes out and they'll get first go at kind of pulling them over to their side. And it goes back and forth over 6 rounds. There's a couple other bits to it, including a fairly interesting end of round mechanism. Whoever's made their potion last, or whoever's had the most goes at their potion, sets a price for an end of game bonus, and then the other player can choose to get that end of round bonus. The other player can then choose to take that end of round bonus, which may be a new ingredient, or it may be an ability that they can use in a subsequent round. But then they take the price that the other person set. So understanding the game, whether a 4 green's worth 2 gold and an upgrade, or whether a 4 greens worth 3 upgrades and 1 gold. Setting those prices are interesting and can change per game depending on what comes out. So overall, it's very much the same feel. You're building up your bag, you're getting better and better potions as you go, you're trying to attract more and more people to your side of the market to cure them, until either somebody gets 6 and wins the game, or the game ends after 7 rounds, with whoever's cured the most people being the winner. Still got the same kind of push your luck, because you can stop whenever you want, but that just gives your opponent free reign to keep going until they bust or also choose to stop. And so knowing what's in your bag is even more important, I would say, than normal quacks, because if once you bust, the other person can just keep going until they get infinite number of goes until they bust or stop themselves. And it's got a place. All the abilities on the cards are different from the main quacks ingredients. They're slightly different colours, slightly different ingredients. Still get pumpkins, very important. The only real downside is that the rulebook's terrible, and I don't know how. And I did have a quick look on Board Game Geek just before we started up here, and it seems like I'm not the only one with that opinion. I read the rulebook and didn't know how to play. And then I was like, well, okay, fine. So I was reading that kind of out of context. I was just sitting with the rulebook. And so then I thought, well, it'll make sense once I get it all set up and whatnot. So we sat down to play, and I still didn't know how to play after setting it up and going through the rules and going through a round. I was like, this doesn't seem right. Much like, terraforming Mars, a common error is to go into a new generation after players have all played 2 cards or taken 2 actions. No, that's not right. Okay, we were initially just attracting our own patience, and I was like, this game's going to be over in like 3 turns. We didn't get that right. It's very clear in the rules, but then there's loads of not even fringe cases, but there's loads of cases where it's not clear about what you can and can't upgrade, when you can and can't upgrade your tokens, because you'll have the opportunity to do so on your opponent's turn sometimes, whether it's in your bottle, what you're allowed to interfere with as such. It's just all very unclear and all kind of spread out a little in the rules as to what should be a very simple game. And I would say the most recent thing I just realised I'd done wrong, where I'm saying that the person that last made a potion sets the price for the bonus. We were doing it the first person that made the potion sets the price for the bonus. And that's a common, it's a translation error issue, right, from the original German. So they said they're going to make that more clear in subsequent printings, along with a few other things. But if you go in the Board Game Geek forums, the rules forum is the most active. It's not hugely active, but it's the most active, and that's never what you want to see for what is really quite a light game. There's not a huge number of rules or things you can do. The complexities come from your decisions and what's available to buy in the marketplaces, and how much you decide to push your luck with going forward. So apart from that, now that I know how to play, it's good. It doesn't replace Quacks, unlike, say, Splendor Duel versus Splendor. I'd much rather play Splendor Duel. But it gives a different way of playing the same game with a whole bunch of new abilities.
Fair enough. I was going to say, I would have thought that the 2-player version of Quacks was just Quacks without the catch-up mechanism, because that wouldn't be very good in a 2-player game.
No. They've done quite well with the sort of catch-up mechanisms, and I think Quacks rat's tails. So the further behind you are in normal Quacks, the bigger starting advantage you have going into the next round. The catch-up mechanism on this one is both when you cure a patient, it goes into your side, but your opponent gets a benefit. They get an upgrade to token, or you get an extra bad thing in your potion or in your bag that you could potentially pull for your potion, and your market stall moves further away. I'll need to look at the rules as to why that happens, but I think because you're getting chased out of town for your quackery. But it makes your next patient harder to attract and call them over. So I think both Quacks games do catch up mechanisms quite well. But I do think tricky. You can't bust too much in normal Quacks, and you can't bust too much here either. You can't go out too early to just let your opponent get several free goes.
Well, there you go. Well, I like Quacks well enough. No, I've not played it too much, which I think is a lot of people's.
That's my most blinged out board game.
Quacks.
Yeah, I've got all the geek up bits, all the bags, the Rex insert, yeah, everything that was going.
Well, I don't even own it. I only play other people's copies. Which is, Quacks is, I like Quacks. Quacks is good fun.
It's well known, Mike, that you hate fun.
I hate fun. No, it's just, it's just, it's.
You're waiting for the campaign mode, yeah? 30-hour campaign.
I'm waiting for someone to, I'm waiting for someone to publish all the opening moves when they've worked them out.
Well, the opening move is to take your dominant hand, put it into the bag,
Quacks,
yeah, and pull out just the good tokens.
So I played. Speaking of dueling games, I played a 2-player game, and this is one that has come up before because it is Pagan: Fate of Roanoke, which is published by Wormgold via crowdfunding and designed by Kasper Kjær Christiansen and Kåre Storgård, and it's a 2-player head-to-head game in which one of you is a witch hunter and the other is a witch, and it is supposed to have its DNA in
Netrunner.
Thank you. My brain just completely shut down for 2 seconds there. I was thrown by the Danish names. I was like, oh wait, these are Danish people. I should pronounce these correctly. And then I was like, oh, but I don't know how. So yes, it's sort of got DNA in it. I can see why people say that. It's probably not that accurate.
Yeah, like I have looked at it because obviously the comparisons to Netrunner got me intrigued. And I was like, this doesn't seem like Netrunner. But I'm not giving it a go to find out.
Yeah, so I mean, I was joking throughout because I called all of the decks and the hands and the cards and things the same terms they would have had in Netrunner as a bit of a joke. The Witch Hunter in the core game gets a card called HQ, I think, which you can then take an action on to gain 5 money, or 5 influence. So I was like, oh, here's my hedge fund,
Yeah.
But and I can sort of see some of the DNA in there, but it is not quite the same. More on that in a minute. But where it is sort of at least similar, or the reason the comparisons might be being drawn, is 2 things. One, it's very card game. It's a card game. Each player gets a deck of cards, and the cards are very important. It's also async, right? So one of you is the witch, and one of you is the witch hunter, and you're quite. I mean, you have some DNA in common, much like in Netrunner, for example. Both roles are taking actions and have a hand of cards and play cards, and cards have different types and do different things. It's the exact same in this. You're managing cards in the hand, and you've got a set number of actions every turn to sort of play cards or draw cards or earn money or spend it. Where the comparison starts to fall apart is that you have and I'll explain Pagan. I won't explain Netrunner because nobody needs to hear 2 sets of rules, and if you know, you know. So Pagan is about 9 villagers. There is 9 villagers in the village, and one of them is the witch. So the witch is randomly assigned a villager card at the start of the game, and the other 8 cards go into a face-down deck, and each one of those cards matches one of the face-up villager cards in the center of the table. And the witch hunter is trying to work out which of the 9 people, it's a bit like Cluedo, right? Which card's missing, or which one's in the envelope. Which villager is over in the witch's play area. Except you can't really work it out. You can, because you can eventually draw the set aside villager cards, but you are unlikely to be able to draw them all. And in point of fact, if you ever manage to draw all 8, you just straight win as the witch hunter. That's a victory condition. what you're actually trying to do really is use that information that you get plus the information on the board to deduce, which person the witch is, which villager the witch is. And then you can kill them. And if you do that successfully, you win. The witch needs to accrue these things called favors on the villagers. And when the witch gets enough favors on the villager that they win the game. That's how they win. Also, they can win if the witch hunter kills 3 of the wrong people. So you murder 3 out of 9 villagers and they were all innocent, you lose. But the thing is, when you murder a villager and they're innocent, everyone hates you and you get a lot of penalties, so you're probably going to lose anyway. So just try not to murder anyone wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway,
if you get one wrong, you might as well try for another 2.
Yeah, right. Every player has a sort of a set of basic actions, like play a card, earn a coin, draw a card. And you can always play into those actions. You get 3 actions a turn. You can also play onto the villagers. Each villager is a unique action, and they're typically better than the ones in your play area. And they might be play 2 cards at +1 cost, or, play a single card, but at a reduced cost, or draw 3 cards, And one of the considerations is that when you put your action tokens out, you collect them back at the beginning of your next turn, and any villagers that you've used for their actions cannot be used by your opponent. So there's sort of a blocking element there as you take actions with the villagers. But what you're doing is you're trying to get cards out your deck, and then those cards can be played into the play area. And both players have a sort of a tableau of powers that they're building in front of them, and they can mess with each other's tableau. The witch is brewing potions that give her powers and setting up familiars that give her powers. And the witch hunter's recruiting thugs and things and setting up locations. And then they've got cards, both sides have cards that can go out onto the table as well. The witch has enchantments that just mess up the witch hunter. And the witch hunter has investigation cards that go onto the villagers that improve their actions when the witch hunter goes, and can diminish the witch's power when she goes. And there's this sort of escalation and changing board state, and additionally, the witch is amassing these favor tokens, and when she gets 2, or when they get 2 onto a card, then they can take the action twice. So it's quite powerful, actually. And of course, it might be indicating to the witch hunter that this is the witch because they're accruing lots of favor tokens there. And it might indicate that they just really like that action and want to do it a bunch. Who knows? You've got to work it out. But yeah, so I played it twice. I was the witch hunter in both games, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. The first game, I lost quite badly. And that was because I sort of forgot about some of the witch hunter's more specialist actions where they can basically kick the favor tokens out. And I just got overwhelmed by enchantments and things. We also got a rule wrong, which didn't help me at all. But that's fine. I had a good time anyway. And then the second game we played was sort of more competitive, like a lot more competitive. It was a lot closer. But it also was a lot longer.
Mm.
And I'm not sure that So I've played some Netrunner. The person I was playing against is very into Netrunner, like actively plays a lot of Netrunner still. And we both enjoyed the game. We had a good time. We both kind of agreed that we probably would have had more fun just playing Netrunner.
Right, yeah.
But I think that there's sort of two... And it's longer. Like, it's longer than Netrunner. But I think all of that needs to be sort of couched in the context that Netrunner is a lifestyle hobby game. And we're talking about people who have played it a bunch. Like, I mean, I might have never been into Netrunner as a lifestyle. I've still played a lot of Netrunner. I can build a Netrunner deck. I recognize enough cards in Netrunner to play it. I could probably be given any deck and at least, play a game. I probably wouldn't be able to put together the master combos without a bit of a primer, but, I'd at least be able to execute it. And not everyone has that experience. And so if you were coming at Netrunner with 0 experience, this would be a lot more accessible. You wouldn't need all that kind of information up front that you would need to access Netrunner, you know?
Yeah.
And if you went back to the Netrunner core set and only played that, this would probably be a sort of similar level of complexity. It might be better. I don't know. Because I'm just thinking back to a couple of years ago when Null Signal first started reprinting the cards. And Chris and I were playing Baby Netrunner at UKG, and we had a great time. And the games are quick as well. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely want to play it again. And there's definitely also a sense. So there's some rules in the rulebook that clearly indicate it is intended to have some amount of deck construction in it. And there's a lot more cards that have been published. And so there's one big box expansion. So I've ordered that because apparently the added complexity really helps the game. I will give it a try. I certainly enjoyed the game. I'd certainly like to play it again. And I'd certainly like to play it with someone who's not super across Netrunner to see how they get along with it.
Mm.
And see if it has a sort of a spot there, you know, to like help Netrunner people scratch their Netrunner itch, maybe with people that aren't able to compete with them in that space. Because that's the other thing. Like I could have played Netrunner with my opponent, but they would have beaten me in every single game. So it wouldn't have really been competitive, right? At least this was competitive. But I do enjoy Netrunner, and I don't know if I would have preferred to play and lose at Netrunner. Don't know if my opponent would have had such a good time if I was getting crushed, though.
Just stomping you.
Yeah, just stomping you. It's like some people really enjoy that. Most people are like, hey, you know, this is a learning game, I guess, which is fine for me. But I guess what I was going to say was that so there's alternate villager cards in some of the expansion sets, which replace the 9 actions that come in the core game. There's, I think, more cards that can be swapped in and out of the Witch Hunter deck. More stuff that can go in and out of the Witch deck. Now, the question is, now that we're doing deck construction and we have to learn a pool of cards, really shouldn't we just play Netrunner? Like,
yeah.
You know, like, so if this solves problems in the game, but then it's just kind of like making it closer to Netrunner. I think the answer is really that this will be probably the kind of thing that scratches a similar sort of itch, but offers a competitive experience for people that don't want to learn Netrunner, don't want to dedicate themselves to learning the thing, are intimidated by the card pool. Like, it's still no comparison, of course, even if you have all of the Fate of Roanoke stuff. But I think the one thing that gets me is the length. If it was as quick and punchy as Netrunner can be, then I would probably be like, yeah, this is great. But the fact that it gets quite a bit longer, and I think this is by dint of wanting to keep it competitive, or maybe just by dint of the fact that the base game, you know, and you know, base game Netrunner can feel quite like a slog, you know, whereas like once you get to deck construction and everyone's building these cool decks that do all kinds of cool things, it can be a lot more rapid, you know, and maybe this with a bit of finessing of the decks and the cards, because in the second game I had so much card draw, and I milled through my whole deck, and I got rid of half the cards because they just weren't doing anything for me. I'd sort of built the tableau I wanted. And it would be cool to have some more sort of ability to put some cooler, more powerful cards in my deck, you know, but I don't know if maybe that just goes against the sort of ethos of the game. Anyway, we'll see when I've got some more cards and I've had a chance to play it a bit more. I also haven't played as the Witch yet, so I'd like to try that. But that's Pagan Fate of Roanoke. Certainly an interesting game, and it's got all that sort of bluffing and, you know, who are they kind of stuff going on, and that's nice.
No, it sounds good, but like you say, once it's kind of out of the realm of board game into the constructed card game, changes the feel of things a bit.
But I mean, yeah, you could still, I think, feasibly sit down and play it and sort of get into a bit of deck construction. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because if it's long, then you're not going to play it and go, let's play it again, but with some deck construction. You know, that's why a game that's, you know, half an hour, actually, even with construction, is great, because you can play a 30-minute game and then be like, all right, we could have 1 or 2 more games. Let's build something.
Yeah. But you've just reminded me as well. I've not logged the games, which is why I didn't remember them, so I need to add them. But I played a Call of Cthulhu living card game, so the old FFG card game tournament a couple of Sundays ago, and I have I've got all of the LCGs pretty much, apart from Game of Thrones First Edition. But I have decks built up for all of these, and we've been going through just as and when, like once a quarter, we'll have a living card game day, and this quarter was Call of Cthulhu. So, Call of Cthulhu is unique as a card game in that you've got your deck and you're trying to win stories which are in the middle of the game board by working your way through various challenges. If I send some characters there, you send some characters there. Each story has different icons, or each story has the same icons, to be fair, but they resolve in a certain order. You check who's got the most of each icon to determine who wins each matchup, and eventually somebody will win that story over to their side, and whoever's the first to win 3 stories wins the game. And it was, I think, a lot of fun. Other people enjoyed it as well. But compared to the last time, which was Warhammer Invasion, Warhammer Invasion and Conquest, it was much harder to get into. So where you're saying about learning the cards and what they can do, every deck could do something, but if you didn't know what it did, it's much harder just to pick up and play. Whereas Warhammer Invasion, most of the decks you could kind of pick up and play and know what was going on. Whereas, to elaborate a little further, each of the challenges at the stories, first of all, you check for horror. So if you have the most tentacle icons, horror icons, terror icons, I think actually, then the other person has to send one of their characters insane, if they can be. And so if you've got a deck that doesn't have a lot of these icons, you're losing this first challenge, which is removing somebody from subsequent challenges. Because after that, you go to combat, where you check how many people are in a fight, how many skull icons are on there, and the losing player has to wound somebody, which may take them out, or they may have toughness and can take multiple wounds. Then you look at the investigation icon, like who gets the most clues, and then you look at sort of the skill icon, who's just, it's another stat to compare, but that puts more clues on your side. And once you've got 5 clues, you win the story. But if you've got a human deck that doesn't have any terror and no willpower to get around terror icons, you have to know how you're defeating a Dark Young deck, right? Or a Migo deck or something that's just all terror icons, because you're sending your guys insane before you even get a chance to go into combat. And typically monsters are also stronger than humans, but humans are better at investigating and winning stories. So if you don't know what your deck does going into it, it's much harder to do well. And I think some of the decks, particularly early on, people stumbled when it was an imbalanced matchup like that, because you don't know what you're doing. Whereas Warhammer Invasion was a lot more fun just with anything. Like, you could always make something work with them. And then when we played Conquest, with the same problem again, that if a player knew what they were doing and they challenged on the right 3 planets and built up at the right planets, and you didn't catch that early on and didn't know how to deal with their area of effect, or didn't know how to deal with their, some of the tricks that might come out, you're going to have a much worse time. So I think people will be keen to play Call of Cthulhu again. Not much good to those of you at home, very hard to get a hold of now, very much out of print. But that was fun times, and I think we'll do Star Wars next.
I'll be excited to hear how Star Wars fits into the catalogue of dead LCGs.
Dead card games.
The ironically named dead living card games.
DLCGs. Speaking of dead games,
I've been playing one that's been dead for about 10 years. Forbidden Stars was published by Fantasy Flight Games in 2015. It's designed by Samuel Bailey, James Niffen, and Corey Knitska. It's now very out of print. It is 2 to 4 players. It's set in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. You're a Space Marine or an Orc or an Eldar or a Chaos Space Marine. And it goes up to 4 players. And I've written here, actually, at 4 players, it's 4 to 6 hours, which I think is wrong. I think it's probably longer than 6. Have you played it?
I played it, and I played it at 4 players. We were done. I'd say 4 to 5 is not unreasonable. But then again, that we had a bit of the warp affecting us, of course, with the time dilation. Came in pints.
That's fair. I suspect they probably also helped you resolve certain things, because we were all quite sober playing it, and we found ourselves with our heads down in the rule book and our heads down in the BGG forum, rules forums, and FAQs quite a lot. It's a game with a surprising amount of niggly little interactions, do we say. But it's very async. Each of the factions is, I mean, fundamentally, you're all kind of doing the same thing, right? The board is space. It's made up of tiles. Each tile has a couple of planets on it and some empty space. And you make a 3x3 grid with 9 tiles with many planets. And then there are actual warps, not just beer, that are moving around the board and blocking access between 2 tiles. And these warps will move every round. And strewn across the planets are objective tokens. And your job is to set out from your home world and collect the objective tokens on the different planets. And there will be 6, and in a 4-player game, you need to get 4. So you need to get 4 of the 6 that you require. And the minute you get the 4th one, you will trigger endgame, and then you'll win. And then if someone else got 4, there's a tie break. And if someone managed to get like 5 or 6, then they'll win. So it's definitely sort of like a race game to these sort of very binary objectives. And you're getting around space by building spaceships that allow you to travel between the planets. You're building dudes on the planets. There's all different kinds of dudes depending on what faction you are. If you're Space Marines, you'll have your scouts and your Space Marines, Land Raiders and Dreadnoughts. You know, if you're orcs, you'll have knobs and trucks. And if you're Eldar, you'll have those falcons and wraith guards and all sorts of things. So, you know, all your favorite flavors of Warhammer 40k, all 4 flavors, there's no more. Don't look up Galaxy in Flames. If you like this game, don't Google that. You'll just hurt yourself. It's too expensive. And so, it is, it's a big space opera conflict game, and, you know, you land on other people's planets, and then you have a combat, and so on. And what makes Forbidden Stars quite unique, and this is a system that, so when I showed up actually to play, they were like, oh, have you played Forbidden Stars before? I said, no, I haven't, but I've played StarCraft, the board game. And everyone laughed because they all thought that I was just making a jape because it's another space game. But actually, this is a reiteration of StarCraft. And both use the same interesting action selection mechanism. Although StarCraft is designed by Corey Knizia and Christian T. Peterson. So not quite the same designers, but Corey's in common. And, you know, Christian's the founder of FFG, so maybe he had some input on Forbidden Stars too. Who knows? But this system is that a round will begin with players taking turns placing action tokens. And you have fewer in StarCraft, actually. In Forbidden Stars, you have 6 action tokens, but there are, is it 6? No, it's 8. You have 8 action tokens in 4 different flavors, 2 of each flavor. And you'll put them out into sectors, which are the tiles on the board. You'll put them into the center of the tile in order to do a thing on that tile. Basically, there's a move token. You can put that anywhere, and you'll move on to the tile, so you don't need to be there. There's a build token, and you must have someone there in order to build. You've got a strategize token, which is kind of like a red herring. It's basically do some internal upgrades of your own, and you can put that somewhere where you have troops. But you can also kind of use it as a bluffing token. Because it can also just be withdrawn for, well, they can all be withdrawn for events. Anyway, the point is, you put out a token somewhere to do a thing, and then someone puts their token on top of yours. And you're like, why you done that? Now I can't get my token. So after everyone's done placing 4 tokens, you're going to go into the action resolution section of the round, where now you flip up a token. But it's got to be one of yours that's on top. So if people have put theirs on top of yours, then you can't play yet. And if all of yours got covered up, then you just miss your whole turn. What? And StarCraft works the same way as this, albeit there are fewer tokens, and you've got this sort of capacity to unlock better versions of them, but that's by the by. The point is, this system is great. Like, it is really compelling, and I can see why both StarCraft and Forbidden Stars have sort of worked their way into people's hearts using this action selection mechanism, because it kind of, it feels almost out of place. Like, it feels bizarre in both games, because there's nothing in StarCraft or Warhammer 40,000 that says you have to do convoluted logistics while thinking backwards. But you do in the board game. The other thing that sort of unites both games, and that's quite, a big part of Forbidden Stars, is the combat system. Albeit they've gotten rid of the stuff in StarCraft where if you had a conflict, everyone had to line up and face off against each other, and then you played cards down into each little fight. Now what you do instead is everybody just mashes up together and you throw a bunch of dice. So that's very 40k. The combat takes a fair amount of time to resolve, and you can resolve several combats on a turn. So there can be quite a lot of downtime, which might speak to the length of the game. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good, fun time, and I like there's a combat deck, and that ties into your units, and so you're upgrading it, and then you need to build the units and that kind of stuff. I wish the same thing could be accomplished quicker. Yeah. It's so long.
As an event game, didn't mind it. The one play I had, like, we knew it was going to be long going into it. I think it might have been close to 6 hours with a teach. But we all kind of we looked at the rules beforehand and kind of got going on it. I do remember, I can't remember if it was me or another player, like, sort of getting stuck behind the warp for a couple of turns and weren't able to do so much. They'd lost a planet or a sector because they were cut off from where they needed to be, and struggled to catch back up again. But that could have just been that game, or maybe there could have been something different they could have done. But
I couldn't speak to whether or not you were making any rules mistakes, but you do have to move all the warps in the event phase.
I can't remember what we did.
It's a little unintuitive, because effectively every player has an event deck, and these are cards that do you a nice benefit. And on your turn, if you've played a strategize token, then you'll get to do the strategize action, which includes improving your combat deck. You'll then put the token on top of the event deck, and in the event phase, which happens after all the actions have been resolved, you'll get to draw a number of cards based on the tokens on the event deck, and you'll resolve one of those cards fully, which is generally a power for you. Each player has their own unique event deck, and each player will resolve one card. But if you have no tokens on the event deck, because you either haven't played strategize or you haven't sacked off any actions, then you still have to draw a card, and you just don't get to resolve any of the cool powers. And what that does is it moves the warp. So every player will end up moving a warp. So it is quite hard to get locked in, but I suppose there is a unique situation where if people really wanted to pen you in, or perhaps they thought it was really funny that it had already happened maybe twice and they kept doing it, it's possible, I suppose. I don't know. It's there's only sort of a few ways in which the warp gates can move, and eventually it would be your turn first, and you could just move the warp out of the way.
Yeah, I remember playing. It was I remember it was fine. I don't know why I've not gone back to it, because it was a little while ago now. But certainly not enough to warrant looking at the fan expansion and all the bits that come with it for Galaxy in Flames. I think there's a second one that's of equal size, judging by some of them Etsy's.
Oh gosh.
I've
Well,
seen.
there's, as far as I'm aware, so we'll get to Galaxy of Flames very quickly at the end, but I just I wanted to say as well, just on the topic of this, like it is long and it is very much sort of like it can be a very heads down in the rulebook experience. I also recommend printing off the FAQs because some of the cards have been errated because they were nonsense, particularly the Eldar if you're playing with them. But yeah, it's an all day event game and it's very dicey, but it's good fun. I enjoyed it. I definitely play it again. Unfortunately, it cannot be bought unless on the secondhand market, where it's quite pricey. And yes, there's Galaxy in Flames, which was the unreleased expansion that they were working on when Asmodee bought FFG or they lost the 40k license. I can't remember which of the many events.
Losing the 40k license, yeah.
Yeah. Many of them, one of the many events that led to the decline of FFG. But they put the print and play files for Galaxy and Flames out into the world, and then people went away and printed off all the cards and 3D printed all the teams, and now you can get Tau, Imperial Guard,
Who?
Turnids, and Necrons.
Oh, the Astra Militarum. Why didn't you say that?
But
They're Imperial Guards.
So I said Imperial Guards.
Yeah. Never convinced me otherwise.
It's you can go out and find that, but it's very expensive to pick up. And given that this is an all-day game, I certainly recommend trying to get a play in before you consider spending that money.
I've got StarCraft Risk. Is that the same?
Yep.
Yep, cool.
I checked.
Probably takes just about as long. Dice chuck in all day in space. Sure. Nice one. So I alluded at the start of the podcast that I'd obviously been doing other things this last couple of weeks, but that does mean that my cousin and his missus was down and hanging out with normies, so to speak. Now they all like playing games, but sometimes it's hard to judge what they're going to engage with and get good with. So we tried to play a game of we did play a game of Distilled. I've talked about Distilled before. You might think it's my favourite game. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it in like 25% of the podcast so far. But I thought they'd like the theme, and I thought it's pretty straightforward. You buy stuff, ingredients for and improvements to your distillery, and then you brew something, and then you sell something. I thought, that's pretty straightforward as far as things go. And so I added in the cask strength expansion for the unique ingredients, where every ingredient does something a little different, whether that's gives you additional rewards for what you brew, or gets you something when you buy it, or lets you gain snowball into other ingredients when you sell it. It took a little bit of time to explain it, and I don't think they got it for the first few rounds. So, as I say, to my mind, Distilled is actually quite straightforward. But looking at Board Game Geek, it's got a 3.0 rating, which puts it 2.96 or something, which puts it firmly in that medium weight. And to my mind, Distilled is not a medium weight game. Like, I understand the flow and the mechanisms and what I'm doing. So the only thing that's of medium weight to me is looking at my objectives, looking at the shared objectives, working towards, and trying to work towards maybe some end game goals with the right bottles, make sure I get points out of my equipment. It's the incremental gains, along with like how long did I leave something in my storeroom to accrue points and flavour. Whereas for them, the whole thing was a lot when the gameplay itself is so alien to you and you've got to read everything. And so yes, fair enough, there is a lot of reading out there, so I kind of follow it. So we played the first 3 rounds. We busted out just before lunch. We're having a late lunch around at the Nigerian tapas place around the corner from me, and we played the first 3 rounds, and I was like, okay, fine, we'll go for lunch and we'll come back. Now, lunch, unfortunately, was a brunch, which came with three tapas dishes and three any drink you wanted. And so everybody had, and we'd had a pint as well just to start to kick off. We're playing Distilled. It's a game about brewing.
It's a game about hard spirits.
Exactly, right.
Having a pint of vodka.
Well, no. So we've gone round, and then after like the second Chapman punch, we'd finished up, and we came back and tried to finish it off the last 4 rounds, and it was pretty hard going. So I think it'd be a little more. You sometimes forget how hard it is for people that aren't so engrossed in gaming to play some of these things, and the things that you think are really straightforward really aren't. They did kind of get it right, but there was a lot going on for them to keep track of. So I had a bunch of games kind of lined up for us to play, and we had a couple of games of Break the Cube, Break the Code, and then we went into Distilled, and I thought, okay, this will just be fine. This will be a couple hours. We'll knock this out now. It was hours and hours to get through all 7 rounds, and then I won by a point, which. Or like, no, I think I won by 2 points. Let's not exaggerate. But I didn't think I had won. I thought I'd lost until I looked at my objectives again, because my friend was gloating, and so I looked at it again and goes, oh, wait a minute, this isn't labels, this is bottles. How many African bottles do you have? And they're like, none. And I'm like, 5 points. And then that took me from 3 points behind to 2 points ahead. They were fuming. I was like, well, you shouldn't have been. I'd said I hadn't made any of my objectives, but you were gloating so much that I had another look and went back to it. So fun times. Anyway, Distilled still fine. Like it's. I thought it would be better with non-gamers, but. I'll need to be thinking about. I need to be mindful of that if I'm playing with.
Well, it's interesting as well that you say that, because I was just thinking about like sort of 3.0, and I think Wingspan is something like 2.8. So Wingspan's not far off that number, and also involves a lot of reading, but people go nuts for that.
True, and Wingspan was one of the other games I had out to play. And they were like, oh, I've heard of that. Wait, did you tell me about this? Or that was just something I've heard about because it was really popular.
So I'd be interested to hear people's thoughts on why Wingspan is more accessible.
Because you don't have to care about as many cards at a time.
Yeah, that's true. I think I was going to say also it's much more procedural. Like on your turn, you just pick a row and do the row. And that's it. And there's no sort of like, although there are rounds, there's not like sort of phases to the rounds and things like that, whereas Distilled's got more complex structure. I
thought it was like buy your stuff, make your stuff, sell your stuff.
Yeah.
It was the phases, but the buying part was really the stumbling block for them to see, because they could buy equipment, they could buy a recipe, they could buy ingredients, they could buy items. They were working towards. They had 3 objectives that you get right at the start. That you've got to read. Then you've got the 3 public objectives. It's like, well, which ones are them that I need to care about? And there's a lot up front. Whereas with Wingspan, you're looking at 5 birds. Which ones are you keeping? And you just generally keep something you can afford to play to get you started.
Yeah, easier to get into. But yeah. I would not. I guess it's a good reminder, because I wouldn't have thought that, auditing the birds or buying the bird cards in Wingspan would be significantly less complex than buying the cards in Distilled. I would have thought that it was the sort of push your luck, how do I compile the brewery deck or the drinks deck? How do I make... I would have thought that would be the stumbling block. So that's interesting.
Definitely... enforced, look, have a water, have a yeast, have a sugar, minimum, because that'll at least let you brew something. And then as they kind of got into it, they kind of knew what they were going for, to make better spirits. But Wingspan's there's only 3 birds out at a time.
Yeah.
Compared to the 12 things in the market. Plus, when you take your bonus for selling a spirit, and you can get anything from the truck, there's just loads. There's loads going on.
Yeah, that's fair. Although, in Wingspan, you can get a couple of birds in your row that bury cards and things like that. So now it's like, oh, you're going to get a card. It's going to be, or you're going to pick up a bunch of cards, and they're going to be immediately replaced. And then you're going to have to bury one and draw a new one. And so there can be more moving parts to it. But
I think so. But you're doing one at a time, and you're only you've put that card out, so you've read it in advance. To some degree. Anyway, whatever. Important thing to note out of that story was that I won.
Yeah, that's the important thing to note. And you won in the best possible way, which is, actually, you read this card wrong.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's always the most fun. Everyone knows it. All right. I played quite a middleweight hero. I don't know what its weight rating is on BGG. It's called Ragusa. It is the second game ever designed by Fabio Lopiano, and it was published via crowdfunding by Braincrack Games and Capstone Games. Capstone, now quite famously known for all kinds of cool and snazzy Euros with great productions. This is a 1 to 5 player light Euro game, and it gives you 12 little houses that you're going to put out on a board, and each time you put out a little house, you will either earn access to resources or you will take actions. And the board itself is based around the harbor town of Ragusa, and it has 2 main sections. One is the countryside. When you put your little token out in the countryside, you'll gain access to what are called resources, of which there are 8. There's wood and stone, olives and grapes, fish and silver. Now, do not confuse these resources with commodities, which are wholly distinct, and we'll discuss that later. But if you put your little house out in the countryside, you'll earn access to some of these resources, and then you can, if you gain access to wood or stone, you'll be able to gain. You'll be able to then place your little houses in the city. I know that's slightly wrong. Don't comment. Okay. I'm not going. It's not a full rules explanation, right? So you get to put your little house in the city, and then the city is made up of hexagons, just like the garden, but now the hexagons have actions in them. At the start, nobody's got anything, and so you start building outside to get access to resources. And then you can start to build inside. And every time you play the house, it goes at the intersection of 3 hexagons. And so each hexagon has 6 points, so can hold 6 houses. And what's kind of clever about this is that, particularly in the inside of the city, where you're building around action spaces, is that each action can only be taken a maximum of 6 times. And whenever you take the action, the vast majority of them trigger the same action for everybody else moving around the hexagon. So you start at the house you just built, move around the hexagon, everyone gets to take the action again. So there's this sense of sort of So I say it can be taken a maximum of 6 times. If you were first in and it's triggered, and then the rest of the 5 spaces are taken, you're going to get to do it like a whole bunch of times, right? So it can only be triggered 6 times. So it's kind of like a really cool action system where you're getting to sort of invest in these strategies and they'll be compounded, but it's also kind of limited by your access to resources. And resources are actually a lot like the populations from EPOS that we discussed in another podcast, in that these are binary trackers. They just tick up, and then you need to have access to a certain amount to do a thing. And the more you have access to, the better the thing that you're doing will be. And so you'll just collect tons of olives. If you have 5 olives, that's better than 1 olive. And if you create olive oil, you won't spend the olives. You'll just get an abundance of olive oil based on how many olives you have. But olive oil is not a resource. It's a commodity. There are 3 commodities. Olive oil comes from olives, wine, which comes from grapes, and silver, which comes from silver ore.
Right, this is just like upgraded resources, right?
Yes, commodities are just like upgraded, except they are spent. They are not
Right.
the other way. So the only thing you can do with them is take them to the trading point and set them onto ships and send them off to someone who wants to buy them, who will reward you with victory points. So you and also possibly pots and silks, which only have value if you have the hidden objective card that tells you they have value. So, right. So you're also building up a wall around the city, and there's a sort of, I don't want to say area control game there, but it's kind of like a route building thing where you want to try to get sections of the wall connected with your pieces. And each intersection of the wall can hold one person's house. So you put your house down so that you connect up sections of the wall. But then you've got gates that go over the houses. So actually each intersection can hold 2 pieces. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of fun. So, I mean, it's a really quite a nice little game. It's better than I expected given its middling rating on BGG. It's really fast, which I really appreciated. It's like 60 minutes. I reckon it'll be quicker if people are across it. We played it at 3. It goes up to 5. I don't know if it would benefit from more players. Certainly, it feels like it wants to be at least 3. But I liked how quick and punchy it was. I liked how I sort of had an idea of what my strategy was going to be. I pursued that strategy. It got a bit ropey. I had to pivot at one point, but then I went back to it. And, it sort of gave me these interesting choices and things to think about. And there was a nice balance of sort of overarching strategy and short-term sort of tactical opportunism. So that was great. But it's also kind of like it never quite got to the tightness. And I don't know, maybe it didn't want to, or maybe it's just not doing that. But it never got to that sort of like feeling of being really tight. Like once we got a bunch of grapes and olives, it felt a bit like we always had too much wine and too much olive oil. Like it never felt like anyone was sort of really struggling to get those things. I also didn't really play that game. I was playing a slightly different game with fish and wood, but so maybe, I always felt like I only just had enough resources, but I also never felt like I had not enough. Like I always felt like I had just the right amount. Whereas the other players had accrued tons of them, but couldn't really find ways to actually convert them into points effectively. So I don't know if that was a lack of tightness or possibly just sort of too much planning around gaining resources and not enough planning around converting commodities into points. And that's the other thing. The rule book's a bit rough. The iconography's got some real issues. And the way we track resources and commodities is not great.
Maybe it counts for its slightly lower rating.
I think so, yeah. I think it might, because the wooden pieces are great. And I'm surprised as well because, I don't know. There's 2 publishers involved in this, and I don't know. I assume that Brain Crack Games actually was the original one, just because of the way the Kickstarter's set up. But Capstone got involved at some stage, and I don't know if that was during production or after. But Capstone have great productions. Like the stuff they've put out looks great. And generally speaking, I never have any issues with the iconography or the rule books from them. So I'm surprised that this had the issues it had. For some reason, the resources are tracked by a rotating card. And it's a square card that you have to turn around. And then the player board has these indents at the top and the bottom where the card should sit. But if it did sit in the indent, you couldn't rotate it because it would hit the cardboard on the corners. And that don't matter because it doesn't even sit in the indent anyway. The card's too big. Additionally, the commodities, and that's another thing. Why are the binary things resources, and the stuff you actually spend and stockpile and get rid of are called commodities? It really feels like it should be the other way around. That's just sort of gamer brain linguistics. Resources feel like something you spend. And I think that's just a colloquialism from the hobby. So it's not a rule. It felt unintuitive. But the commodities, which are the things you actually spend, are tracked by a little stone that moves up a numbered track in the middle of your player board. And it's so easy to knock those things. Like, I was really surprised for Kickstarter, it didn't have double layer player boards.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was before the time, but I don't think it's that old. I mean, 2016 or 18, something like that. So, yeah.
2019.
2019, really.
I think, like, the proper...
older.
Everything... I think the double layer player boards are really only pushed since Big Box Terraforming Mars, to be honest. Whenever that was.
No, they were doing it with that. I don't. If you know what instituted the double layer player boards thing, comment down below.
Yeah.
But it was before. There was a Kickstarter for Terraforming Mars that came with double layer player boards before the big box. That was the one where they brought out the expansion where you go to Earth and debate people.
The worst one.
The worst, I think that's what it was called. Terraforming Mars, the worst expansion.
So far.
So far. Just you wait.
Prelude should be on its way.
Prelude 3.
Prelude 2. Yeah.
Prelude 12. But so Ragusa, not as bad as I thought it would be. And light and enjoyable. So I wouldn't want to put you off playing it. But yeah, the production was a bit rough, so in a competitive
Well, I might explain
field.
why it's only $14 on Capstone Games' site right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's dirt cheap.
Seems
to pick
like a
up.
good price, yeah.
I mean, for $14, yeah, it's worth it. Just remember that at the market, you can only trade one commodity, even though the icon shows all three. You have to pick one. But at the end game scoring, it shows the same icon, but that wants sets of one of each. Why is it the same icon? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Whilst it might not be the same, just looking at the kind of board and the wall system, are there any similarities to Merv?
So I have played Merv. And obviously Merv is Fabio Lopiano again. And that's published by Osprey Games. Merv is a lot heavier. Merv is a lot heavier. Merv is a 2-hour game, probably, possibly longer. I've only played it at 4, which is the maximum player count. It's interesting. There are pieces in common, and I guess the commonalities are that both are very Euro and both have interesting interactive action selection mechanisms. So obviously in this you're investing in hexagons, and the more people that invest in the hexagon, the more you get to do a thing. If nobody comes in, you get to do it, just exclusively, but that's not going to happen. The other thing is you kind of need people to come in, because the price of putting a token on a hexagon increases based on how many you have there. Mm-hmm. So if you get like some out and then other people are triggering it, you don't have to pay again to get some actions again. So there is a sort of a sense of like sort of collaboration there. You just need to make sure you're getting more profit overall to win the game. In Merv, there's like you're triggering rows of tiles, and people are putting little guys onto the rows of tiles. I'm trying to remember exactly how it worked, but yeah, you have to be sort of mindful of who else is in the row or who's going to go into the row. There's also raiders that come and sack the city, and they attack the rows and columns, and you build walls to protect against them and then get benefits for protecting people's stuff. But no, I would venture that although same basic DNA, very, very different. Ragusa is super fast. Merv is very heavy, and you could teach and play Ragusa in half the time you take to do Merv.
I've not been playing too much else, I don't think. Been relatively heavy on Magic the Gathering, but just on Arena, so the digital version of that, which isn't real life. I've not been loving the latest set. but mostly I just play Brawl, which is like the arena version of Commander, but just 2-player. I'm playing a lot of Marvel Snap, but that's not really a board game, even though it's kind of like Air, Land and Sea.
Oh, I do like Air, Land and Sea.
Well, if you like Air, Land and Sea, you'll probably like Marvel Snap. It's not the same by any stretch. There's 1,000 cards to... No, there's not 1,000. There's like 200 cards to choose from for what goes into your deck, but same thing. You're fighting over 3 locations. You need to win 2 out of 3 to win, and it's not simultaneous reveal. Air, Land and Sea simultaneous reveal, right? Yeah, no, sorry, that's right. Air, Land and Sea shot about. Marvel Snap is simultaneous reveal.
Ah, okay.
Because it's hidden, you choose, and then they're both revealed at the same time. That's the primary difference, I would say. Well, and there's a lot more. Digital version's a lot more involved.
No, of course, as you would expect. Anyway, I will wrap up with a quick revisit of the Blighted Reach, because I talked about it on the last show. I don't have a whole lot more to add. We played it again, though, literally a week later. Like, everyone was so keen to go back and play it again, which is crazy because it is like a 12 to 13 hour thing. Of course, this is Blighted Reach, the campaignification of Arcs, designed by Cole Worley and published by Leader Games, with art by Kyle Ferret. And we played four players. It was the same with 1 swap out, because they couldn't make it for the right day. And, we're pretty much heads down. I don't know if the best way to play Blighted Reach, honestly, is a whole day. I think it's probably better to do one of the 3 games, either the first game or the last game, on its own, and save the game and come back to it and have a break. Maybe. There is something to be said about the whole holistic experience. It is very satisfying, and it's a lot of fun, and it creates a great story. But I don't think we got to the end of it on either day and gone, well, that was nice. See you all tomorrow. It's always been, do I need to take tomorrow off work? Yeah. This was a lot. So, to the positive, the sort of the way the game unfolded, the way the universe, the space, the reach developed was quite different, and it felt very different. We had some of the fates. The fates in the first game were still in common with the last game we played. I was a new one. I was the steward. So even though I was a different fate, I was still trying to protect the empire and keep it together. Yeah, I think, what was different to this one, what was most significantly different to this one was in the first game, nobody pivoted to the sea fate. So the sea fate is the fate you get dealt in the third game. And if you accomplish your objectives in game 2, you can choose to stay with the fate you had there or pivot to sea. And in our first game of it, everyone managed their objectives in game 2, so they could all stay their fates and chose to do that. In this game, going into game 3, we had a couple of situations that were a bit different. I had accomplished my objectives in both games, so I was still the stewards going into game 3. But I had a choice to pivot to a sea fate, which I had not considered until I was dealt the sea fate, and I thought it would be really funny. But one player had been effectively eliminated from the game. Sorry, that's wrong. They lost all their pieces on the board. And they could come back into the game and possibly even be competitive in terms of point scoring. But realistically, everyone was going to pivot to C, because I once again had quite a strong power lead going into the third game, and it would be quite difficult to catch me up on power. Now, the way the first game played out, I also had a big strong lead going into game 3, and that came down to the roll of a die. So it's not to say that, 20 power ahead or whatever is a foregone conclusion. Far from it. Now, the sea fates work differently to this. They effectively ask you to complete different objectives, they want you to, and if you complete those objectives, you just straight win. So you stop caring about power almost entirely. The downside for you is that you do still need to have at least one power to win. So if you completely tap out, you're disqualified. But you can earn power as well. So you could go down to 0 and then back up to 1 and then do your objectives. But they also have powers that are quite extraordinary, but they cost power. So if you've sort of amassed more power during the game, and then you pivot to C, you can spend those more often. But the player who's sort of out of the game, it was clear to them partway through game 2 that it wasn't going well, and they were in a bad position, And so as game 2 wrapped up, I said, like, look, nobody wants to stick around for another 4 hours and have a bad time, especially when you've been playing this long. So if you find there's a C fate that will still be competitive, you just pick that one, Like, just pick something you can do and enjoy. I don't care what cards are dealt. And in defense of the game, I suppose, there was one called, God, I can't remember what it's called now. I want to say the Clairvoyant, but it's not that. It's like a prediction system. So what you have, or it's a fate that wants to predict who's going to win certain things. So you're going to be putting tokens out and trying to get your guesses right. And the Clairvoyant, no, that's what I said. Anyway, it's not right, but something like that. And you're putting tokens out to make predictions on who's going to win things. And then if nobody guesses, you're going to get quite a lot of points. If you guess right, you can reveal. If you guess right, you get a big bonanza. But also if people pick your guess and they get it right, then you lose points. But if they pick your guess and they get it wrong, you gain points. So it's this sort of like double bluff, triple bluff kind of guessing game thing going on. And you don't need to have any ships on the board at all to do it, which is great. So that kept this person in the game and gave them a competitive position. And so what happened was, going into game 3, we all picked the C fate. Everyone ditched what they were doing, started something completely radically different. And it was pretty wild. And it really came down again to like pretty much a dice roll. But it was such a great experience again. And it was such a good story. And I had a really, really good time. I feel like I should be madder that every game comes down to a dice roll in the third game. I mean, but I don't care. I'm having such a good time.
I don't know, like, is that because there's a difference between coming down to a die roll when all your actions have mattered versus coming down to a die roll when none of your actions have mattered.
Yes, and actually, I think that's a really key observation, because it does feel like all your actions matter.
Yeah,
I think it would be actually really impossible to play this game without. And that's not true. Like, very occasionally you're like, oh, I've got, some construction pips that I can't use, or something like that. But actually, even when you're in a position where your actions don't matter, you feel like that's your fault. Like, you should have done something different so you weren't in that position, I can see some people might see it differently. They might go, no, I just got dealt a dumb hand. And I could understand that perspective. I've played a lot of arcs now, and I've never felt like I've had a dumb hand. So I think it might just be how you feel about inefficiencies. Because sometimes you'll get a card that, if played under the right circumstances, could give you 4 great actions. But getting to the right circumstances just doesn't happen. Or it's impossible. So you have to ditch it. And then that feels bad, because if you'd just been the right circumstances, you could have had 4 great actions. And now you've had to sack it off for 1 bum action, And I can see how that would make people who pursue that kind of efficiency feel bad. In games where that kind of efficiency is super, super important, I probably wouldn't like that. But this isn't really a game about that. This is a game about trade-offs. This is a game about having the one right action at the right time. and paying the price to make sure that you do have that opportunity. And I think it's great. I've really enjoyed it. I think Blighted Reach will probably not come back out for a little while, but certainly I'd be keen to play the base game again. Yeah. Blighted Reach 3, 2 weeks from now. I'll bring it to Essen.
Fun. Well, I still hope to play Arcs soonish. I'm not. Is normal people copies out there yet? Or is it?
The pre-order copies are supposed to be, or should have been arriving, yeah.
Okay, so might be copies floating around I can get access to.
Yeah, well, it'd be great to have a catch up and hear your thoughts on it.
Nice.
Well, now that your family's gone away, you can play Arcs and Jest, and then we can have some proper reviews.
Agreed. Actually, I might get Jest played next week, or at least I can organise that. So that seems like a plan. Now you mention it, but I've still not played Plum Island Horror. Still not played Inventions, and I've still not played Mr. President. I need to get them to the table.
Well, now that you've got some peace and quiet, maybe it's time for some solo gaming.
Playing with all my favourite people.
Exactly. Well, we'll catch up with Barry next time to find out if he's managed to get any of those games to the table. But for now, I think we can call this an episode. Thanks everyone so much for listening to us prattle on about board games. Don't forget to leave a comment. If there's a game you'd like us to talk about, you can leave a comment. Can't make any promises, but if we've played it, we can talk about it. And in the meantime, we'll say goodbye for now. And also thanks to everyone who supports the show on Patreon. Without you guys, this wouldn't be happening.
Bye.